We're joined right now by one of my favorite sports writers. He is an author. He's a longtime columnist. Joe Posnanski joining the show. Joe, your book, Why We Love Baseball, available now wherever you get your books, published last year. And your new book, Why We Love Football, available for pre-order. Book will be available on September 17th of this year. I always associate you with baseball. I'm curious how the Why We Love Football book came about.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's weird to me in some ways that I've become so associated with baseball because, I spent my whole career writing about everything, and baseball has always been a huge favorite of mine. But I grew up in Cleveland. I grew up a huge, enormous football fan, much bigger probably than anything else, and I love writing about football and always have. And so this was really cool for me because this was a completely different kind of book than my last two, which were both obviously baseball books, and this one was a lot of fun.
So I'm guessing Art Modell moving the Browns to Baltimore, not on the list, not on the Why We Love Football list.
No, pretty low on the. Also, there are plenty of actually Browns moments that are not. I mean, they're on the list, but they're not high on the list. It's been a rough time for sure.
In these books that you're putting together, they kind of, go through these different vignettes, right? These moments, telling the story of the sport. I found this always that this is kind of an interesting thing is that, I grew up, I'm 43 years old, so I grew up watching sports in the 80s and 90s when, you had 4 TV channels, you might have ESPN or something, but everything, there was so little on TV that everybody saw the same stuff. Now you can flip around. I've got a buddy who's got, the MLB package, and he's literally inning by inning, batter by batter, like jamming around all these different things. In like the TikTok, Instagram generation, do we still have, in your opinion, these flashbulb moments that cross all societal barriers, or is it more fragmented and regionalized just because of the nature of how people consume media now?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I don't think there's never a moment like, say, the U.S. beating the Soviets in hockey where the entire country catches it all at the exact same time. Everybody's watching, everybody's seeing it at the exact same time. Like you said, there weren't that many options. So when you saw a great Super Bowl moment or a great World Series moment, I mean, the Super Bowl is still its own thing, but when you saw a great NFL moment or a great World Series moment or something, everybody consumed it at the same time. And now, because there are so many options, but also because there's so many different ways to repeat things, we live and relive and relive every moment, right? So you see some incredible play made, some incredible catch made, and then the next 3 days, it's all over social media. You watch it again and again and again on TikTok. You watch it again and again, with different music and different backgrounds, and everybody compares them. So I think those moments are still there, but we don't experience them the same way that we used to, for sure.
I think also the innocence of reliving a sports moment is something that's changed because I think as a society, we're just generally angrier now. Everybody, It's polarized on every different topic. I'm not just talking politics, but everything. And so some of the great plays in football history, you see touchdowns in Super Bowls in years past where we're running them all the time on NFL Network right now, and you're like, that's not a catch. Like, he caught the ball for a second, then he hits the ground, the ball comes out, and they give him the touchdown. That would have been the controversy and everything. At the time, it was just, hey, he scored a touchdown. Like, now I'll hear from my father, Drew Pearson's push off and things like that. Sure. Some of those moments live in the ether, but it's this general anger. And I think that we're also seeing it in baseball right now, where I've long been a proponent of, for the strike zone, of the idea of robot umps, just because you've got, I know he's gone now, but Angel Hernandez just guessing on balls and strikes, and it somehow, to me, diminishes how much you enjoy the game. But everything now is subject to, well, there's all these different angles, and when you freeze frame it on this, that's what people consume now. It's just weird to think like that whole idea of just these magical moments, somebody somewhere is getting ticked off and trying to get everybody else as ticked off as they are about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is something I saw again and again and again in doing this football book. I mean, this is the 100, coolest, greatest, most magical moments in football history, and there are a whole bunch of these moments that I watched and went, well, that does not stand up. Like, there's no way that's a catch. That probably was a fumble. You see that again and again. But the other thing that was super innocent about the way it used to be is, yeah, you could argue about it all you wanted, but once it was called, it was called. There was no replay, so there
Right.
was no appeal. There was, that was it. I mean, I can remember time and time again, you would see something happen and you'd be like, well, they just blew it. They just missed it. And then the NFL would apologize the next day, like that mattered to anybody, and like who cared because it already happened. But that's so everything was instant, right? So you saw a touchdown scored and you could cheer and you didn't have to worry that like 5 minutes later they were going to
Yeah.
be like, yeah, that's not a touchdown. So it was just a completely different experience, I think, for fans.
Well, even just how you watch things on TV. I mean, the yellow line for first downs came in
Oh
like
yeah.
1994. I want to say, score bugs. You're watching these old Super Bowls. They didn't have a score bug on the screen until I believe Fox introduced that as well. Baseball, you didn't have that box. And I've heard people who are baseball purists who have argued the box makes this worse because, yes, you now see if it's a ball or a strike, but then you also have this feeling that this is the final answer on this and that the box couldn't be slightly off, the tracking device couldn't be slightly off, and all that gets us to Angel Hernandez is no longer an umpire. It's just it's fascinating how these things evolve over time and how technology shapes the way that we view, I mean, literally everything. Oh, so you're putting together all these moments in the book. You're talking to a lot of people. What's your favorite? I don't want you to give away the whole book here, but give us a little tease. What's your favorite story that you uncovered while talking to people for this book?
Oh, there were so many. I mean, that was the same way it was for baseball. I mean, I kind of feel like I went into both books going, I know a lot about this sport, and then you'd suddenly, find out, the full story of Duke Slater, who played in the 20s and was, a great African American football player many years before Jackie Robinson, many years before football reintegrated in 46, and his story is just incredible. So writing about him was amazing. There's a CFL moment in here that is known somewhat as the 100-yard play, which is awesome and so much fun to track down. There's a whole bunch of college stuff and high school stuff and really cool moments. But to me, going back to the NFL moments was, this book is mostly NFL moments, and going back, and some I remembered, some I remembered wrong. I mean, that was really fun to go back and look. And, when you talk about like the first down marker, which I think is really good. I'm not a fan of the box in baseball, but I am a fan of the first down marker on television. I mean, you go back to the greatest game ever, right? The 1958 championship game came down to what clearly seems to look like a terrible mark on a Frank Gifford run that
Right.
that probably should have been a first down, and that whole game should have been completely different. But no markers then, so it's one of those things that greatness came out of like mistakes also, and we don't make those mistakes anymore.
So you're anti-strike zone box on TV. Are you also anti-robot strike zone?
No, I'm not. I'm not anti-robot strikes. I'm anti the box on TV because I think a lot of times it's wrong and it's misleading. I don't think the box is particularly well done, and a lot of times when you compare what the box calls a strike with what later Statcast proves to be a strike
Right.
based on
Yeah.
on what they have, it doesn't always match up. So I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of sort of to me it distracts a little bit from the game, but I'm not, no, not at all. I think it's inevitable that there's going to be some form of robot umpiring, whether it's a challenge system or whether it's something. I mean, it's inevitable. You can't keep watching World Series games, playoff games, important baseball games, and seeing umpires miss strike calls because it's like we have the technology that should never happen anymore. So, yeah, I think that's coming eventually. And the NFL has just been much more aggressive about capturing whatever technology they have, except for the chain gang, right? Like other than the
Mhm.
chain gang, which is still so delightful that they still measure first downs with this ridiculous, 18th century technology. Other than that, the NFL has been really aggressive and baseball has been very slow and reluctant to make changes. So it could be a while, but eventually the automatic strike zone is coming. I'm sure of it.
I don't want to come off as an ageist because, again, I'm not as young as I used to be either. Nobody is. But I'm on the sideline almost every week for an NFL game, and I always see the chain gang. There is nobody on the chain gang under 75 years old.
Never.
And so think about, like, the logic that you have to go through here. Like, I'm sure these guys have had the job for years, right? But you're playing. You got bigger, more physical athletes than we've ever had. The game is faster. It's more violent. Then someone's like, well, we really should put like 3 old men as close to the field as possible and see how long it is. And it has happened where somebody gets rolled up and they break their leg or whatever. They're working now with the laser, the chip in the ball. That's going to become more. They're going to experiment with it further here. So they are developing that technology. The chain gang won't be as important. You lose, though, again, a little of the innocence with the index card and things like that, trying to measure different things. I think I've seen the robotic strike zone. I went to a St. Paul Saints AAA game earlier this year, and like watching it, how efficient it is. It's literally strike, taps the head, guy goes, it's being challenged. Yeah, it's a ball. Turns around, and the game keeps going. It's 5 seconds. I am overall not a huge fan of the game speeding up. I do think I understand, like, the pitch clock. I understand why it's there. I personally, going to a game, I'll go to more games than I'll watch on TV. Like a 2-hour and 10-minute baseball game in the park, that's not enough. I take 2 kids to the bathroom. I've missed 2 whole innings. I can't go get a beer. Like, I don't see most of the game.
Look, there's pluses and minuses. The other side of it is you don't want to slog through 3.5-hour games that just, take forever. It seemed, speeding up baseball sort of was this inevitable thing because it just kept getting slower and the players were not either willing or able to speed it up. So, something had to happen. I get it. But I've also seen the challenge system in the minor leagues several times. I've seen it actually a whole bunch of times. Seen it here in Charlotte, seen it in other places. It's stunning how efficient it is because you're exactly right. All you have to do is tap your head, challenge the call. Pitcher just points and challenges the call, and it takes 5 seconds. It's like tennis. It's like in tennis where the call gets challenged, and they just show a little sort of animated video on the screen, and that's it. And then it's like, okay, you know what? You were right. That was a strike, or you were wrong. And the game goes on. And there's a limited number of challenges, which I think is really good too, because I don't think you want people challenging every single call. So you have to be really careful about when you use your challenges. I like it. I hope it's actually brought up to the major leagues, at least as a trial for spring training. Let's see how we like it. But at least as a trial, I hope it's brought up pretty soon.
So here we are, the All-Star games tonight. Home Run Derby was last night. This is always the mid-season classic here. As you look out, from your perspective, at just the rest of this baseball season, baseball in general at this point, what are your favorite stories right now, Joe, in all of baseball?
Wow. Well, there's obviously the Aaron Judge, story of whether or not he's going to be, have the greatest season ever or whatever. He's slowed down a little bit, but he and Shohei Ohtani are obviously just an incredible story. Paul Skeens, I can't even begin to describe how exciting I think it is to have a young pitcher like Paul Skeens come up to the major leagues, especially for a team like Pittsburgh that has struggled obviously for a long time, and just shake everything up. He'll start tonight's All-Star game, which is really exciting, and he's pitching, as well as any rookie I've ever seen. He's just incredible. He's only made 11 starts, but he's been pretty much great in all of them. He's taken no hitters through 6 innings in 2 of them. He's absolutely incredible. So he's a really fun story. There are a few teams that are very interesting to me. Cleveland seems to be, they're leading the division and they're playing great. I think the Orioles are a very exciting team, and you're going to keep watching them. The Phillies are playing, better than anybody in baseball right now, so they're fun. So yeah, I think there's a lot of cool things happening in baseball at the moment, but it's all different because obviously so many of these teams are going to make the playoffs now. It's not like the regular season is going to decide who the best teams are. It's always going to be decided now in October, and that's good in some ways because it makes October very exciting, and it brings more teams into the game. But in other ways, it does make the regular season feel a little bit less important, and you enjoy it more for the stories, like you were saying, than I think you do for the pennant races anymore.
Why We Love Baseball available now wherever you get your books. Why We Love Football available now for pre-order. Book will be available on September 17th of this year. That guy right there, Joe Posnanski, one of the best. Pleasure to have you on, sir. Thank you very much for the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.